go. We're recording. Well, hello, everybody. I'm Thomas Ott. I'm with Bohemian Bohemian Swarm AI podcast. And I'm joined here today with several guests. One of them is my co-host, Jess McDonald, but we'll get to introductions in a second. I got to make a disclaimer, Jess, right? We always got to make the disclaimer. This is not a worldwide technology affiliated podcast. This is just a bunch of coworkers and colleagues and husbands and wives and whatever you want to call it, talking about AI, talking about shop. And today's topic is going to be about data centers and their water usage, which we know is a huge hot button item right now. And I'm joined with two guests, and I'm going to give them over to Jess to do, kind of lead the introduction. So Jess, I'm going to hand it over to you and introduce our guests.
Sure. I'm Jess McDonald. I also work as an AI advisor at WWT, not a WWT podcast. My background is more in data analytics, econometrics, and and I've worked in a lot of impact, outcome assessment, causality. So I'm the stats nerd of the group. And to my left, joined by Brion McDonald, my father. This is who made me this mouthy. So if you have any problems,
I'm Brion. Yes.
And what do you do, Brion?
I was a commercial general contractor and built data centers and clean rooms.
Yeah, and
That's awesome.
The AI crew, don't you?
So still hang with them.
And is that bird your mascot, Brion, or is that just kind of a random event that just happened?
Well, in the business market world, you have to rent space, and this is just an example of a data center rental concept. But
I love it.
Yeah, Peachy just met him. He just got here an hour ago.
Exactly.
She's attached. She found her perch. So.
All right.
Pigeons walk around data centers. There must be a connection.
That's awesome.
And over to you, Steve.
Hi, guys. Happy to be on this podcast with you guys. I know we've been talking about it for a while. So my name is Steve Idowu. I am a business and technology consultant. In my career, I've worked in both industry and as a consultant for small and large organizations, Fortune 100 companies, etc. I've deployed over 25 AI solutions in my day. So very excited to be on here talking to you guys about data centers and providing maybe a little bit more of a management consultant perspective to the conversation.
Great. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Brion and Jess. So before I kick it off, I wanted you guys to think of one key sentence, and just could be a 30-second response. And this goes to all three of you, and I'll just run through. I'll start with you, Steve. But what's the most misunderstood fact about data centers and their water usage?
Wow. The one misunderstood fact, I would say it isn't really much about how water gets used to me. I think it's really people don't talk enough about who ends up holding the risk, right? So I think everyone argues about the number of gallons, but the real issue is that tech companies, they've been treating water like it's a budget, it's a line item on their budget, right? And conversely, communities have been treating water like it's a birthright. And so I think, the part for me that I think is important in 2026 that we don't talk about is these two are finally going to collide. Or maybe it's going to slid into 2027, but I think those are the two facts, right? Like neither party owns this. So I'm kind of curious how this is going to shape out. To me, that's the one fact that always sticks out.
Okay, cool. Jess, same question to you, and then we'll finish it with your dad.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, right, with Steve and what he's saying. When you look at the actual total consumption of water usage, if you look at it nationally, right, you could say it is a little bit of overplayed, right? We don't necessarily have the national level use. And if you look at semiconductors and agricultural use, it's far greater, right? But at the same time, what Steve is saying, these aren't being done kind of on a national instrumentation basis. A lot of it's being driven by for-profit. And so it really matters on the local level. And there are quite a few examples of local levels, right, where these projects are being pushed and the public's pushing back, and it is having water issues, and it is affecting communities. You know what I mean? And that gets back to where they're being built and how they're being built, right? And all these issues that we're kind of currently facing. But to me, yeah, I mean, there is future technology that we're looking at, like photonics, right? And like splitting atoms and considerably less consumption of like that really valuable resource. At the same time, like it's not overplayed because like as of present day, right, there are communities and there are people that are being affected by this negatively, and they don't have to be if we had a little intention and we did this like collaboratively. So to me, it is a big problem. All right.
Awesome. Brion, same question to you, Brion.
Yeah, so my take or my feeling is that water is always going to be a key component of any data center, simply because of how it handles heat transfer, and that aspect means that the water that's used can be recycled, and so it isn't necessarily in a case where the water has to be used and lost, but you know, with technology, the water can be used and recycled. And you know, there are ecoolants today that are becoming available. In fact, I was reading the other day about an e-coolant that Shell has come up with that can be utilized for cooling as well in circuits, batteries, and radiator systems. So water is just the medium. The question is, how do we conserve it and reuse it?
Okay, good point. Yeah, I mean, we have been hearing, and I know, especially in the Southwest, there's been a lot of talk about, you know, and Texas is building a lot of data centers. You know, there was the big Utah data center proposed that would have taken like all the water and all the electricity that Utah is producing. You know, there's a lot of questions about, you know, water is a huge topic, especially from a community, right, as Steve was saying, and also from an economic basis, because we are using AI and we do need AI. So actually, Brion, back to you, since you've done a lot of construction, or you've built a lot of data centers, or are active with that.
Yes.
Over your period of time, have you know, how has the modern data center have evolved? I know in the old days we used to use a lot of CPUs, right, which also did run hot, and there was probably more air cooling.
Correct.
But how has that changed now with this new breed of GPUs? Are we going to see more of a drive toward, you know, more of liquid cooling and the requirement for water? Is that just a given, or is there a sweet spot where we can balance that?
Well, there's definitely going to be a demand for increased consumption of cooling, and air cooling is not able to make the transition that data centers in the future are going to need. So like recently I saw a prototype of a server rack that was roughly 4 foot square and 7 foot tall, and it consumes 1 megawatt of electricity. And the only way to get a megawatt into that server is while the conductors are hollow, and you're actually running fluids inside the wire that's bringing power to the server and through the servers. So they're actually being plumbed. So I think the technology has to go in two directions, one of which is integrating cooling fluids of one type or another, with the fact that we also need to work towards semiconductor designs that are less energy intensive. I think there's always going to be that push.
Yeah.
And you know, my final comment is that when people talk about having access to water, everybody throws out what they want in the ceiling is unlimited perspective. There's a difference between what we want and what we actually need. And I think that's where conservation comes into play. And, you know, a data center, like, we need all the electricity and water that the state of Utah can produce. Well, that's not realistic.
Right. That's not realistic. And you, of course, it tends to
yeah, it goes back to what Steve said, right?
Yeah.
And about how treating like water and these different items, like wattage and stuff, as a line item, right? Versus like, we know how the public perceives these and how they have historically, right? And you're not factoring in the cost of the rippling in costs, right? The secondary and tertiary. of these changes, right? And how financially that's going to affect communities on a large scale.
And
They have to be done in win-win situations, in my opinion. Like you need to be working with the public of where to build them,
Right.
how to build them, how does the public benefit? What's their percentage of ROI on this investment? Taking this risk, putting this near their children.
That's a good point. That's a good point, Jess. Hold that thing, because it's going to tie into the question that I want to ask Steve now. Is when you had mentioned community and kind of this head two things colliding almost. Do you really think that should water usage be reported as mandatory and public, kind of like what we're doing for emissions? We have a lot of we're generating various particulate matters and so forth that are monitored. Do we really think that we need to create a mechanism from a policy standpoint, or from a state level or even federal level, where we should start reporting water usage by data centers?
I mean, I absolutely right. But I think it's bigger than just reporting, right?
Bigger than that. Okay.
Yeah, it's already starting to happen. I think, again, giving you the management consultant answer here, the real question is whether it's being done well, right? So I think we're past debating whether this should happen. There are some states. I was looking the other day, like Brian was saying, I was doing a little bit of research, and I found that I think there's like up to 10 states now. I know Illinois, California, surprisingly South Carolina, some of these other states that you probably won't think are a little more progressive on this lens, on this front.
Very conservative versus progressive, right?
Exactly. So it's a mixture of all of the states, right? Just kind of just show you how sort of unified some people are when it comes to this. That these states have bills that are moving through different legislator, and I know there's a U.S. bill now, a federal bill. I think it was introduced by I want to say senator in Illinois, requiring data centers to report their water energy use, right? So California,
water and energy.
Yeah.
Water and energy. Okay.
And then they're pushing, I think a couple of those states are pushing for this to be sort of public dashboards that folks can see. So not just reporting, but then people can kind of log into and kind of see it. And again, I think there's a bigger pattern that's a play here. But to answer your question, absolutely. This needs to be mandatory, and I think at the federal level, actually.
Actually, I'd like to pose that question to actually both of the McDonald's. I mean, I know one was building and one is
squared,
right? So yeah, McDonald squared. Please go ahead. Yeah, what do you really think that we really and the other question too, which I didn't ask you, is what would be the accountability mechanism, right? It's one thing to report it, but where do you set the levels of, like, you've exceeded it and now you get your hand slapped or something, right? So there's also that question which we didn't dive into. But Brian, Jess, same question to you. I mean, should this type of usage be mandatory?
I think the short answer is yes, right? Like duh. Like duh, right? And why are we debating it? You know what I mean? And why aren't tech companies and developers, they need to be leading in this thing. Like, if public trust is backlashing against you and they're filing lawsuits against you and things like that, what do you think happens when you finish construction? Like, we're seeing it all over the country. They're gonna burn it down, right? Like, let's get out of our own ways and stop wasting money and resources and do win-win-win situations. Doesn't mean that everyone splits profit equally, but like, you have to go into some massive work. There should be some massive overhaul. And like, these organizations that need it, right? They need to take the accountability and the ownership of like rebuilding America, because that's just where we're at. If we're gonna win, we have to win together. So like, in my opinion, it's like, stop being ridiculous and like figure out how to do this in a way that everyone benefits. Because like, there are ways of doing that. We've published articles on that. We've talked about it. Everyone's talking about it. And if you don't know how to do it, that's why I think universities are the access to that grant funding. Because they have public trust. They know win-win situations. They can measure outcome and causal, right? But like, whatever you do, if you're gonna force something down the public's throat, like, this is not dealing with other businesses like for-profits used to. They don't understand how to do these win-win-win situations. They've never been asked to. And we're saying, like, look, we're in a new age, the age of intelligence. Wake up, like, you have to have the public's trust, support to be successful.
That's a big thing, right? The public trust. And right now, everywhere you go, and Brian, we just jump in just a second. I just want to comment on this. Everywhere we go, we are seeing communities pushing back. We're seeing a very strong grassroots pushback against data centers. And to what your comment said about winning, Jess, it was, I do believe that the data centers and, the AI that we're building nowadays will have very good benefits for mankind. It appears to be very, very lopsided, and their messaging, is not getting through. There's a perception, whether true or not, right? Like for instance, somebody that will listen to this podcast and they're going to come back at us and they're going to say, well, did you know that agriculture uses 10x more water? But my response is, well, you can eat agriculture. You
exactly.
can eat microchips, right?
People, priorities people.
Yeah.
AI is really amazing and we can do tons of breakthroughs and, but it's like foundational layer. Like, where is the population in Maslow's hierarchy of need? Where are they?
Yeah.
Not where are you? Where are they? They're at the very base foundation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brion, just to close the loop. Your thoughts on that? Should there be some sort of reporting mechanism for water and energy usage, right, or something? Should there be some kind of policy or something developed to help regular people know that that maybe AI data centers are not the bad boogeyman?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think, when farmers have, as an example, federal contracts, and this occurred in my career, where large industrial farms in the middle of winter with no crops planted are pumping water into empty fields in January to utilize their federal allotments. Because if they don't, they lose that allotment for the following year.
Yeah.
So they pump and consume water even if they didn't have a use for it to maintain it. So I think that the point in that is that it's kind of like measuring efficiency. Communities need to know that they are being efficient with their water. And simultaneously, I think it's important for communities and industry, as an example, in the community that I live in, they're actually constructing a water recovery system where water goes from the sewer and waste treatment plant, and it's recycled so that it can be used for either drinking or landscaping. And so if communities knew that the first segment of water that goes to a data center is water that's actually come from that recovery cycle of the water that the community has already used, then they wouldn't feel like it's being taken away from them, but they'd feel that the resource is actually being recovered and reused.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And that was.
I just want to jump in real quick, Tom. I could, to that point, Brion, I do agree. That's why I close my statement by saying I think this needs to be federal, because, to be fair, there are some companies out there trying to do the right things and want to report. I think it's all about that accountability issue, but there is confusion around, and even disagreements in terms of what you consider water used, and then how do you report effectively. You have some people that are, again, like I said, trying to do the right things, others that are trying to maybe game the system. We are in the early stage, and I look at this as more like emissions reporting back in the day. When it first started, there was a lot of confusion around it. Now, emission reporting didn't really stop climate change, but it did stop companies from being able to say we had no idea. So I think water reporting, to me, is going to sort of do the same job. It's going to turn this into something that we can actually hold companies accountable for.
Yeah.
And they can be proud of, right? Like, look at what we did. Like, this was our water consumption, and
I think it can also be an example where you have, a regulatory thing that says X percentage of data centers' water consumption has to come from recycled water.
Yeah.
And built in right at the get-go.
But part of that, I think, is like the practitioners, right? Like those of us who are really doing this, right? It's helping set those KPIs, because there's no way that governance knows what those should be, but we do, right? So
Right. Like one of the things that I'm very, very worried about is a couple things. As we know in the tech world, there is this mantra of, move fast and break things, right? And I understand the sentiment, but in the case of environmental systems, and my background is actually in civil engineering, and I have done work on environmental impact statements, and there's a long list of those things. And I see data centers popping up everywhere, and so fast because a lot of the federal requirements have lowered the threshold of what's required for an EIS, for good or for bad, right?
Right.
But then there's issues where, what about environmental sensitive areas? Just because you're putting something in the desert, doesn't necessarily mean you're not destroying anything. Those desert systems are very sensitive ecological systems. There's agricultural issues. Right. Not archaeological issues. There's water issues, right? There's all these different things. And the thing that I worry about is that we're moving too fast and we're not letting the regulation and the other things, the checkpoints, right? To say, well, whoa, buddy, whoa, hang on a minute. You're not thinking about everything when you're not looking at everything holistically. You're just looking at it as a small window. So actually, Brian, I think it's you wanted to jump in there, but your thoughts on that? Do you think we're moving too fast? Because it is a strategic priority for this administration, right? It's considered a national priority for us. So do you think we're moving too fast?
I think industry is going to move as fast as it can.
Okay.
I think we perceive ourselves as being behind the 8 ball or not keeping up with the rate of change that we need to. And so I think if you're a CEO in a company and there's a shortcut to getting your center open, I mean, you're going to live and die, I guess, by the quarter, right? So there is.
Yeah, that's true. That's true, right? We're seeing, new data centers being built rather quickly, and they're installing, gas engines or natural gas to power them, right? When you could argue, well, maybe if you use solar or wind or some other renewable resource, you could help lower the grid, usage, and that's another big thing.
Well, also building them. Sorry, Thomas, but building those with that intention, right? Instead of saying all right, we're gonna build 100 new ones in Texas. It's why aren't we sitting down and saying, all right, let's map it all out. Where's the best places to do it, right? We've written articles and these.
Leverage AI, Jess. Leverage AI to do this.
Yeah, exactly. And it's it's already we know where the best places are, where you get the most out of hydro, like Mississippi River and things like that, right? Why aren't we building them? Because we haven't incentivized the production or use of renewables, right? Yeah. But when you think about it, though, that is way more sustainable, right? Yeah. Not because of the consumption of energy, that's sure, right? Yeah. But by having differing methods that create that power, right? When one goes down because of whatever, you have 2 backups or 3, right? Whether it's SMR, nuclear, or wind or hydro or solar, right? Or a combination of all those things. So pick target areas to build them where you can least amount of damage to the population, right? Where you have the most environmental factors to drive that and increase that over time. It's why aren't we doing that? Those are the low hanging fruits. Catch up, But
good point.
We can buy this, we're not taking that holistic even intention of building it. And policy is going to have to transform, right? We're seeing that. And we're going to have to start seeing people who understand technology and AI, leading in those spaces, and institutions helping lead in those spaces to help governance to catch up, because we can't keep this pace. And the amount of money that we've lost just from not listening to the public or considering them a factor is astronomical, and no one's talking about it. So it's
that's a good question. That's a good point. And maybe I'm going to ask Steve. And I know you've done quite a bit of AI work, that you've done things into production and so forth. Has there been any type of discussion about informing the client? The clients will say, I want this use case solved, right? And all right, but what does it look to be a good AI citizen from a stand of okay, are we utilizing resources correctly? How are we actually making an impact? What is a good AI project look like relative to, say, building an AI data center?
Yeah, that's a very good question.
It's a tough one, I hope.
Yeah, it is. It is a tough one. You keep having me. I feel like I'm back one of the big 4 days. So I don't know if it's a good or sort of like a bad sort of thing.
Yeah.
I think it's more of a maybe a framework, maybe you know,
I like frameworks.
yeah, a framework or maybe even a checklist, right? To think about the ways to kind of guide and think about what's good and what's not, right? So, in my mind, the first thing is like, where does the water come from, right? So I think good deals, if you will, commits to maybe recycle water, non-drinking water before the construction starts, right? Oftentimes, companies start these projects and then halfway through decide, oh, we can't use this or we can't do this. Like I think that was like the Google facility in Ohio had this issue where they promised to use 100% recycled water, but then only after the community starts to create an
To
uproar.
lose.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one, and I think you have to implement real limits, right? Not just promise that you're going to have real limits out there, and then what's the actual limit? To the point that Brian was making earlier, how do we work on creating that efficiency? And so making sure that that hard number that they say is not just a market employee, but we can kind of hold them accountable to that. And then the other piece for me is like being ready at the onset to understand who takes the blame when something goes wrong.
Oh,
right?
yeah, right.
So
The buck stops where?
I got one on this.
Exactly. So that's, to me, that's all part of the deal. And I think the other thing as a consultant, when I'm talking to clients, is you need to buy some goodwill, if you will, right? So one of the things is who pays for this local water system. So like, again, I don't want to shout out any company here, but for Meta, I think, again, like I said, I did my research on some of this. I know they're building something in Kansas City, and they had to invest, I think it was like over $500 million in that local water recycling infrastructure just to get approved. To me, that's a sign of a serious deal, right? That's a sign of a company that really wants to impact the community. So they're paying for the upgrade and the infrastructure within that community by spending their money. They're going to benefit from it, obviously, but the community is also benefiting. So that checklist is what I will have as, okay, this is a good deal. This is one as a client that I will support and recommend for you guys to move forward with.
Yeah.
Before you jump, Jess, real quick question: when you were doing your research, and maybe this is not specific to the Meta example you use, did you find out how they're going about maybe messaging to the community, because the community is going to hear Meta, Facebook is bad, they're going to hear data center, there's water going to be used, and they're going to hear my electricity rates are going to go through the roof. As part of this upgrading that Meta is doing, are they doing a better go-to marketing messaging or something along the line? Did they do something like that?
Yeah, they have a big PR behind this. So they're going to the town halls, right? Raising the reasons why they're doing it, the benefit for the community. So they're like taking like a grassroots approach, right? They're sending letters and mails to the community, informing them of what's coming and what they're doing, right? How this deal is going to benefit them. So it's probably like more of a political election, sort of like a campaign approach that they're taking to this. And I think it's effective. I think it's worked, because I think, again, there's still some pushback, right? But it's probably a little bit less pushback with them highlighting some of these benefits and the sort of infrastructure that they're creating in their community.
Yeah, they're
great.
in the community.
Yep. Yes, go ahead. I know you wanted to jump in. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. And it's like those are the kinds of examples and stuff that like we need to see. And I think a lot of tech leaders are stepping up in different spaces, right? And like morality wise, shared engagement with public. But like another example was like in Arizona and like Tucson, and there's huge pushback, right, over the Colorado water rights. I think like AWS was like the anchor of that one. Like when the public responded, like AWS backed out as the anchor, And I think like that's the kind of stuff like it doesn't make the news because it's not about like big money or whatever, right? But it's like these tech companies making like some important decisions considering the factor of the public health that I think is like what's going to build that trust. Just like what Meta, like investing in in the local systems, that's what the public needs to see. They need to see actions, not words. They need to see these guys like showing up and actually doing things, and saying like, yeah, we're considering the entire like we're here. Let's do this as a team, As we
All right. Actually, so let me, and Jess, and this is also to Brian. I mean, you mentioned Arizona, and I think it was AWS pulling out. I don't know who that was, who really pulled out. But that's the Southwest region, and that is typically a very, deserty, low water rainfall type of place. Should we really be, and maybe this goes back to policy, Steve, right? Should we even just consider building, new data centers in these, water stressed regions? I mean, just the optics look pretty bad, right?
I mean,
Should we even consider it?
Go ahead, Steve.
I mean, to me, this may be controversial, but I think
Yes.
I think banning entire regions is the wrong way to start kind of think about it, right? I believe that banning the location is sort of like don't ban the location, ban the method, right? As we've been talking about today, right? If a company can prove that it's not competing with the local resources, I think where they're building this data center shouldn't really be the fight, right? Again, I think if they're gonna build it in the desert and there's some innovative approach that they're gonna take to not only, again, you talk about maybe this town now that's like this devoid of a ton of water, there's some innovative things that they're gonna do, right? To improve other aspects of that community. Like, to me, I'm all for it, right? Like, I don't want to put this umbrella out because this place is already short on water. They shouldn't build there. I think we have to be, Jess always talked about this. Let's use our brains, right? Let's be innovative. Let's think about solutions that's worthwhile. So I don't focus on like flat out banning certain locations. To me, I think there's gonna be some ripple effects, unintended consequences by doing that.
Yeah, let the data scientists in on this one, right? Like just thinking about last year or the year before, I was working with Yale, right? We were working on like localization, like policy work, right? And so like the data collection of that was absolutely a nightmare. Getting local data, like we're like faxing and calling like local state, at the very local level, city level. And you know what we found though, completely unrelated to like what we're talking about, but there's some cities that are like ghost cities. They've got like 2 people registered there. And if you look at the localization of the data, just like we do in NGO work, we do in academia work, we do in medical work, right? And drug discovery, I think Steve is 100% right. It's a case-by-case localization layer and like balancing like what's the impact, the pros and the cons, and the long-term effect, and just,
So I definitely support that idea of getting the data scientists involved, but I think that there needs to be of a cross-functional team, not just data scientists, environmental engineers, right, contractors, right, people who build stuff, right. I mean,
they'll find your spots. They'll find your spots, right? But right.
Yeah, Brian, what do you think?
Yeah, I believe even today in the property segment where you've got brokers that are out there looking to capture or identify sites that are good data center sites. So there's already a sub-market going on of people trying to optimize their proximity to power, their proximity to water, to create these opportunities for companies. So I think sites are going to continue to be developed. And then in terms of working with communities, like in the case of building a data center in the desert, is geo-exchange or the underlying conditions possible to have cooling without impacting the local water resources.
Yeah, like China's been putting data centers underwater, and we're talking about putting them out in space now. I don't know how that will work, but
in Norway underground. Yeah. Right. Yep. But tell us about geothermal. Like, tell us about your experience with like the AI build in your place.
So, we're doing we're doing a geo exchange building right now. And,
wonderful. Okay.
And so underneath the building, the ground is 67 degrees year round. Okay. And so we're able to heat and cool the building, and we only have to overcome a 4-degree temperature difference between the earth temperature and the desired temperature. So you could have a situation, I'm making this up, in Arizona where you could have a closed loop cooling system where the ground is forever at 60 degrees, and then utilize that intrinsic land cooling in lieu of in water to do the cooling.
And you've done
that makes sense.
You did geothermal.
That's really cool.
Fast, though, right?
Where it's like a car's water use. It's a closed loop
Right.
system. And, maybe that's a solution for building in climates like that.
That's a really neat thing. I mean, I spent a couple of days in Iceland, and I went to go visit some of their geothermal energy production, and I mean they have the luxury of having a lot of hot magma underneath their surface, and they can heat up and so forth. But that's actually a point that I hadn't even thought about, is using an innovative way, which I'm going to guess probably increases the cost for over standard cooling, but perhaps the messaging will be better to say, look, we're going to use the ground underneath us, and we're going to use a closed loop system. So the water usage will go from, I'm going to guess a number, let's say, 1 million gallons a year to 200 gallons a year. I'm just making numbers up, but something, some sort of order of magnitude. That's really, really cool. And you're currently working on a project like that.
Yes, that's correct.
He also did geothermal in his office buildings like many moons ago, right? Funded by the city of Palo Alto. And as a result, he's always had small startups, whether it's cloud, right? Everything in his office buildings. Now he's got AI. And one of the perks of being at my dad's office buildings is he doesn't have to pay for electricity. There was no electric bill.
The real
now there
I love
is.
that.
I get to hang out with young, smart people.
Hey, that's what I do too.
That's the fun part.
But I remember that phone call I got from you. What was that, like 6 months ago?
Yeah.
It was before GTC, and it was like, Jess, like I've never had electric bill in the last like 20 years. And these guys, I got like a $14,000 electric bill this month. Like how do I gotta charge them, right? Like.
Brian, for people that are gonna listen to this podcast, the work that you describe, I'm sure environmentalists are going to say, with the work that you're doing, are you disrupting the ecosystem underneath the ground? With the work that you're doing, I don't know if you guys have done any sort of work or research behind what that process looks like, because undoubtedly you are, I would imagine, maybe going to increase the temperature slightly there. You are going to affect the ecosystem to an extent. So what does that look like? I just want to provide the opposite lenses for people that are listening.
So in my world, or in the installation in question, the average temperature is, like I said, 66 degrees. With the geofield utilizing the earth, it kind of, depending upon summer, winter, it kind of goes 2 or 3 degrees up, and then 2 or 3 degrees down, because we also use the system for heating in the winter, and in the act of doing that actually chills the ground underneath the building.
Got it.
So, but with a data center, since it's only one way, then to your point, it may have a bigger impact.
All right, that's awesome. So I think we're getting close to our time, so I'm going to kind of ask a couple of questions to you all, and then we'll probably set it down. This has been a really wonderful talk, and I think what came out of all this is some possible new innovation and some ideas for, we definitely need to keep our eyes on the ball and so forth. But this is perhaps a tough question to answer, because it's going to ask us to predict into the future or forecast. But I'm going to start with you, Jess. 10 years out from now, when we look back at what we've been doing here with data centers and everything that's been going on, do you think we're being reckless, or do you think we're going to look back at it and say, well, we managed it well, or were we just reckless and had no clue?
I think that we're seeing enough signs from leadership in the tech world, that they're figuring these things out, and they're seeing that we don't have the systems in place to keep up or to do the balance that we need, to like make sure the longevity of everyone in America is good. So I really do think that like it's going to take some growing pains over the next, year or so, but I think we're going to get this right. And I think they're using, their newfound wealth and power positions to try to get the policy that we need to be successful, right? Like we have to address energy issues like this year if you want to stay in the game. And that's coming from like, not just me, it's like Elon, all those guys are saying that, you know what I mean? So I really think that we will get it right. How we're doing it right now, if we keep at this level, no, we're gonna waste billions of dollars building things. The public's gonna like push back, and like, there's been a long history of decades in which like for-profit has gotten to push the public around, and that's changing, right? Because we're at the bottom. Everyone's in the foundational level, and they're not protecting. It's like what Steve said. This is like a birthright. They're protecting their houses. They're protecting
their way of life. Their way of life, right?
And
their
like
family.
That they've got nothing left to lose. Like we take like the economy is taking everything from the workers and the labor force. So it's like we either get this right or it won't happen.
Yeah. Steve, how about you? You think we'll look back at this in 10 years and say we screwed up or we did good?
Well, right now it looks reckless. I'm not gonna lie, but I think the next year or two, it's gonna really decide how this is remembered, right? So I think 10 years from now, we'll probably won't say AI itself is reckless with water use, but I would say that the first 5 years or so of us doing this at scale probably was, and I think the companies that are going to survive are going to be the ones that treat the next 2 years or so and kind of do things the right way. And I think podcasts like this, raising awareness like this, is truly going to matter, and it does matter. And I think people that are going to come across this are going to have a second thought about, hey, are we doing this the right way? Should we have bigger conversations about this? So I think, in a sense, 10 years from now, when we look back, I think, this type of work, this type of awareness is going to help us not say it was reckless. That's my hope, at least.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It's not too late right now, we still have a little time, but like the people who are working it and like we all need to speak up and get engaged and help drive that, because it's not fair to expect that like a couple of individuals at different organizations have all of the answers. We need to also be like, groundswelling this, spreading the word, getting like best solutions, best ideas, and like helping.
Yeah.
Brion, how about you? Reckless or well managed?
I think Steve is right. In the get-go, we're going helter-skelter.
Yeah.
The question is, will we go forward in an iterative sense where we identify our mistakes, make a correction, proceed, make a correction, proceed, make a correction? I think if we model that behavior, we can't not succeed. And so, but I agree in the near term, it's kind of helter-skelter.
Thomas, what's your opinion?
I think I follow the consensus that, I think we're doing it very reckless. I deep down, when I was building machine learning, applications, and I was coding, and I was just tinkering and whatever, I liked that feeling of, move fast and break things, because, it was all about like you fail forward and you fail forward fast. And I love that startup mentality, because that's innovation. To me, that's innovation. And that's what's driving our country forward.
Right.
However, though, my background in engineering and, environmental impact statements and all that, and being somebody who really deeply cares about the environment and especially water after living in New Mexico for 5-6 years, I've come to appreciate how fragile the resources are, and how the attitude we've taken for many years is just like, oh well, nature will just recover. But we've seen the data, and nature is struggling in a very, very bad way. And so for us, I feel and I can understand a lot of the people who are pushing back, because without water, right, you're essentially giving a death sentence to people. Just today, I was reading on Reddit that Angel Fire, New Mexico, which I'm familiar with, has issued a water emergency. They're running out of water, right? And somebody ironically posted in the comments, said, "Oh, time to build a data center there," right? I mean, I know they're being sarcastic, but so I think it is reckless right now, and I think we need to look not only toward data scientists to figure out a lot of this stuff, but to environmental engineers, to civil engineers, to contractors, to people who build stuff, and look at it and say, we're taking a holistic approach. Maybe the innovation is geothermal. Maybe the innovation is a regional policy to create solar panels over parking lots, right, which we're not affecting, right? So I think there's a lot that can be done. I hope that our younger generation, especially Gen Z, who are kind of like really against AI,
They are.
take an approach of like, let's get together with everybody and let's try to fix this, as opposed to taking an attitude of like, well, it's too late, what are we going to do, right? So that's how I feel about it. I think we are being reckless, but I hope, from Brian's standpoint, I hope we do it as an iterative process and try to make it better.
I mean, we have to,
Yep.
otherwise we have to. And those solutions will be local, what they are.
Yep.
And like, it's those local people, community groups and churches and universities and the people that are already ingratiated at the local level that know, right, what the huge issues and constraints are. They have to be at the table,
Yep. All right, great.
The same. So.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
One more last question before we hang up, and then we're just going to go across the panel, start with the McDonald's. One thing, when we hang up this podcast, what's one thing that you want the audience to walk away with thinking about? Jess?
It's not too late. Like, get involved, be vocal, share your opinion, be authentic, It's like, I know that there's a lot of like concern about like talking different interests and like speaking out and stuff, but if we all work together, this is America. Like, we've got this.
It's America.
She's a patriot. She does this, right? We can do it, right?
But like, seriously, we have faced far worse conditions than this in like the 1930s and stuff, and we pulled it together. So if we did it once, we can do it again. And now we have AI to help us. So go use your experts and get involved, and carve your space. And like, let's make America, again. But really, like, let's make it for everybody, Let's lead. Let's not react anymore. We can do this.
Brian, what do you think?
I think we need to, as always, call our representatives, phone and bug them, and say we want, if we're going to do a data center, we want it to be representative of the interests of the community as well as the business at large, and utilize our universities and educational systems to help drive solutions. Because I think iteratively we work together, we solve problems, we make the world a better place.
I like that. I like that teamwork. All right, Steve, bring it home, buddy.
Yeah, so for me, I think, going back to what everyone has said, I would encourage people, my closing would be to encourage people to get involved, and this should matter to everyone, regardless of your location or the region or what side of the fence you're on. And don't watch the sustainability reports. I think, you asked me earlier, I would say watch the deal terms. A lot of this information is public. Every big company, big tech company, hyperscalers, they all have, this beautiful pledge to be, water positive by 2030. We can't wait that long, right? So to me, what actually tells you if a company is serious about what they're doing is much more very boring, right? Did they agree to real limits on water withdrawal, and did they do so proactively before the community asked for it, right? So, and like I said, that information is public. We can go look it up. So that would be my closing.
That's great.
All right.
Very good.
Well, my closing is simple. I do believe that working together, community-based, grassroots program, being educated, involved, and calling your representatives and voting accordingly and being involved at the local level has always been a positive driver for me personally. You see results quicker, and it bubbles its way up to the top. So that's my thought. I hope that everybody will follow and take what we've talked about here to heart and think about things. It's not a easy answer. It's probably not an easy fix. It's complex, but with all of us working together, all of us putting in our 2 cents in whatever we do and our expertise, I think we can definitely move the needle, and to use that term, right, in the right way, and be kind to the environment around us. So with that, thank you so much, everybody, for joining the Bohemian AI Swarm, or whatever we're calling it, podcast. Thank you, Jess, for being such an awesome co-host. Steve and Brian, thank you for joining. And we'll chat again. Until
next time.
Next time. All right. Talk to you later. Bye. Bye, guys.
Bye.